have won it all. High fly ball into right field. She is gone. He struck him out. 2 balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk the ball. Let's
What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined today by Scott Geirman, Daniel Starkand, here to break down all things Dodgers, all things trade deadline, as we are officially under the hour mark until the 2024 Major League Baseball trade deadline expires. As all of you know, the Dodgers have yet to do anything significant today. However, there are reports of what the Dodgers have been involved in, and so we'll start there. The biggest move of the day is a move that just came down in the last 15 minutes. The Padres acquiring Tanner Scott from the Marlins. Jon Heyman reporting that the Dodgers were in this one until the end. Quote, that may have triggered the Padres to do more. The Padres sending 3 of their top 5 prospects to Miami, including a top 50 prospect and another guy outside the top 20 for Tanner Scott and another reliever. Daniel, I'll come to you first. Massive deal for the Padres. This is the kind of deal that Dodger fans are hoping Andrew Friedman will make, even though on the backside of this, the Padres are kind of getting crushed for what they had to give up.
Yeah, we did a video, I think it was yesterday, where I kind of said I was out on Tanner Scott just because of the market is so crazy right now. And when you look at his numbers, the ERA is great, but, you know, he walks a lot of guys. So that, you know, the underlying stuff shows he's not a 1.1 ERA guy as he's been the whole season. And that's pretty much what the Padres traded for here, like 3 of their top prospects. I think I saw a tweet that like the Padres have traded 5 of their top 10 prospects in the past couple days, and it's only been 4 relievers. So like it's not like they've gotten like a big name starter or anything, or a big bat to add to their middle of the lineup. So while obviously those guys will help their bullpen, and those are moves that have improved their club, they also gave up a lot. So yeah.
Scotty, you and I were talking just before we came on. We can say that it's an overpay from the Padres, and as much as we like to poke fun at AJ Preller, there is a sense in which you kind of have to respect the fact that they are going all in somehow for the 4th consecutive year, it feels like. But there's something about the fact that they were willing to push their chips into the table that even though it's the Padres, there has to be some level of respect for.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Padres offense has been playing really well. Like when you've tuned in, if anybody's tuned into a Padres game recently, you've seen the offense have the moments where they're coming up big. They have 2 starters at the front end, you know, Dylan Cease, Michael King, that are really carrying a load right now. You've got some guys right in the middle that they feel pretty confidently in. So for AJ Preller to do this again, you know, this is probably, you know, last year didn't go too far into the trade deadline, but got depth pieces again. Now you can revisit stuff like this, get the top arm in the market, reliever wise. Josh Hader, same type of stuff. You know, he went out and made that type of trade. Josh Hader was, you know, got brought in, top right arm, went step right in, didn't miss a beat. Does this again, Tanner Scott. Last 2 days, just like Daniel said, 6 players, 6 prospects for essentially 3 relievers. And I think if you toss up values, you know, these are big overpays by the Padres across the board. It's easy to say that, but for a team like the Padres, they feel their window is now. They have a couple guys on expiring deals, and this is it for them. So just like you said, from a point, you have to respect it, what they're doing, and willingness to say, yeah, these guys are prospects until proven otherwise. But when you look at it and you step back, you say, man, they ponied up.
Yeah. Real funny tweet from Bob Nightingale that just came across the timeline, by the way. He says, this is just classic Bob Nightingale. 1 hour remains until the trade deadline with 2 of the game's biggest starters still on the market. Garrett Crochet of the Chicago White Sox and Jack Flaherty of the Los Angeles Dodgers. The Dodgers continue to be engaged with Nightingale's tweet. So hopefully a little foreshadowing there that maybe there's something, although let's be honest here. This is just Nightingale screwing this up. Don't read too far into the fact that he had the Dodgers in there. But I mean, Scott, we talk about going all in. I was trying to put this in Dodgers perspective. The top guy in this deal, Snelling, is basically ranked the exact same place as Dalton Rushing is. And then they're talking about like the Padres roughly 4th and 5th prospects. And again, depending on the list, this is going to change. But if the Dodgers had gone out and said, all right, it's Dalton Rushing, it's Justin Robleski, and it's Jackson Ferris, and that's the 3 players that it would have taken to go get Tanner Scott. While we sit here and say, hey, I respect the Padres for doing it, would you have made that deal?
I would have said no. We spoke before we hopped on here. It's reminiscent of what the Cubs did in 2016. For me, a deal like that comes at a time when you feel like your team is in a position where you say that is the last piece that we need. And for the Dodgers, I don't feel like a back end, like a closer is the last piece that they need. I would still come away from the start, like from the trade deadline, saying they need a starting pitcher. And then they missed out on that. So if their overpay was to go get a reliever, I would still be upset. I would still be not happy about it.
And that's, I think, the balance that I think is going to be interesting to watch individual people in the chat on social media process as this whole thing plays out, which is there's an element of we're all going to be frustrated if nothing happens. And yet when you look at an individual deal like Tanner Scott and say, well, I wouldn't have done that. We can't have it both ways. Like we can't be mad that they didn't go out and get a Tanner Scott and also say, well, like I wouldn't have paid the price that it takes. The price is what they say it is. And you either say yes or no. And if Andrew Friedman, again, was offered something along the lines of rushing Ferris and Robleski for a guy like Tanner Scott, all three of us would say no. Some of us probably more quickly than others, but all of us, I would say, quickly are saying no to that deal. And yet, if that's the price for Tanner Scott, the Dodgers are going to have to figure out what they do. Daniel, as we near the, again, 50 minutes until the deadline, still plenty of time to make a deal. And Andrew Friedman clearly in on Tanner Scott, in on these moves. Nightingale mentions Crochet and Flaherty, the two names. Flaherty's a guy who will be a free agent at the end of the year. And so you imagine that Detroit is going to be motivated to move him. I suppose I haven't looked into if they could offer him the qualifying offer. If that's the case, then maybe they're not wholly motivated to move him because they could recoup something back in the event that he were offered a qualifying offer and doesn't sign it. But we know they're motivated there. Crochet's different because he's got some team control, although things have gotten ugly. So what's your sense of, as you're reading the tea leaves of what we know about Crochet and Flaherty? Obviously the Dodgers have been linked to both guys. Like, do you have a sense that a move is going to be made, or do you think this market's getting a little too crazy for somebody like Andrew Friedman, who just doesn't like to go there?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could sit here and say I'm super confident that the Dodgers are going to push all their chips in and make that big move, but we've just seen it too many times. I feel like we sat here last year waiting for that big move to come, and it never really came. So like you said, like prices are high right now. We're seeing a rental reliever, like you got to give up 3 of your top 6 prospects for a rental reliever, albeit a really good one. Like those prices are super high. But I feel like it's more worth it for a starting pitcher, at least in my opinion. And when you look at the Dodgers, like kind of what they need. So if they did decide to make a trade for a big time reliever, I think that would bum me out. But sitting here understanding that prices are going to be high, like I still think it's worthwhile to look for a starter. You mentioned the two guys that are out there with Crochet and Flaherty. Like, yeah, you're probably going to, overpay, but at the same time, your window is right now. Like the farm system is loaded. Like you could afford to give away some of those guys to chase a World Series with the roster you have right now. Like, yeah, sure, the window's going to be wide open. The Dodgers are going to be good for a really long time, but you only get so many of these chances. Like you really never know what could happen. And right now the Dodgers have a window where they're maybe an upgrade or two away from being, the favorites to win it all. Like they're right there, even though everything has gone wrong seemingly. So, obviously it's not going to be cheap, but I still think they have to look and see what's out there in this last hour, 50 minutes, whatever it is here.
And Scott, you just mentioned to me on the side that Flaherty could be offered the qualifying offer. So there is a little bit, It's not like they're going to get nothing for Flaherty. They would presumably offer him the qualifying offer. He would reject it, sign somewhere else, and then they would get sort of a draft pick back, which isn't nothing. So that's a significant value, although they would do much better based on what we're seeing now. In the market for given what it is. Where are you at, Scott?
So, with Jack Flaherty, I tweeted out that from what we know now and what we think we know now, rumors based, what people are hearing, putting out a deal for Crochet, even without hearing any traction there. Looking at someone who's looking to get an extension mid-season at the trade deadline, if that is what the Crochet camp and his agency is looking to do, and there is smoke there because the White Sox GM came out and spoke about it, the lack of communication and how it's kind of broke down. From that sense, you can kind of understand how that type of deal is going to take some time. Okay. So if they're working on it, then they're working on it. And for all we know, it could break right now. Like, we have no idea if that's something that they can handle and take care of. Great. But Jack Flaherty wise, it's just a matter of, do the Detroit Tigers value a draft pick and holding on to him, or are you looking for some prospects that you might just want to hand pluck? And I think they would prefer to do that. It's evidenced by them, pulling him from his start and saying, the best offer that they're going to get is at the deadline right now from them. That's the type of flyer you take, a 1 year, $14 million contract to a team like the Tigers. It's nothing, because eventually, like, if you're not contending, you're trading him. So it's one of those deals where, for a rebuilding team, you say, I want you to sign as many 1 year guys as you can, because if they perform, you deal them and restock there. So there is motivation. Flaherty's performed like this. I just had it pulled up. Since June 4th, he has a 2.08 ERA, 3.64 FIP. Like, he's been a guy. Strikeouts, almost 10K per nine. He's walking 2 per nine. Like, he's someone who he's had some issues with his back stuff, but since those injections, he's had no issue. Ken Rosenthal has said as much every single time reporting on him. I believe strongly in Jack Flaherty. So I think that the best move for the Tigers to make is to move him, to deal him. And whether it's to the Dodgers, I think it says a lot. Sorry, I'm rambling, but I just want to get it out that I think it says a lot that the Orioles went for a couple, other pieces there. They went and got Eflin and then Rogers from the Marlins instead of going out and getting that one. They're looking for some depth spots there. So I think Flaherty is a real possibility for the Dodgers, as reported. And until the deadline hits, they're on both.
Yeah, Flaherty's interesting because Tanner Scott, remember, has no team control. So the package we just talked about for a relief pitcher is for like 3 months. If that's what a relief pitcher is netting, I don't even know if that package would scare me for Flaherty, and he's way more valuable than Tanner Scott is going to be.
You think?
I would imagine. I mean, I guess maybe I shouldn't assume that. Like, I would imagine a really good starting pitcher is always going to be worth more than a really good relief pitcher.
I just question because it just makes me think of, I know Daniel co-signed, you look back at the Aroldis Chapman deal, it was for over Gleyber Torres, right? So it's how much you willing to give up? Like, they gave up 3 of their top 5 prospects in that deal, the Padres. Yeah. So is Jack Flaherty going to net that? If that's the case, then that's not something the Dodgers can do. I don't think, would anybody be okay with that?
I mean, I just, do you think that a starting pitcher in theory is worth more than a relief pitcher, right? Like, if we're talking about a top of the market starter and a top of the market reliever, I would just default assume that the starter's got an extra 20 to 30% of value attached to him.
Yeah, I mean, you would think. Maybe you could say Tanner Scott is kind of an exception to that, because he's the true back end closer, dominant, the game's over when he comes in. In theory, obviously no one is really actually that, and that's not always how it plays out, and that's why I personally would value the starter a lot more, because you're going to get a lot more bullets out of him, in theory, as opposed to Tanner Scott is probably going to throw 15 regular season innings for the Padres and 6 innings in the playoffs, if they even advance. So I personally would go for the starter, but I guess we kept seeing in the days leading up here, Tanner Scott is he's going to get a haul. He's going to get a haul. Yeah. So it's not surprising when you see, he nets that big haul, but I'm guessing, Flaherty's going to get a pretty big haul as well. I don't know, comparable how it'll be, but given what we saw for Kikuchi, and I think who was the starter that was dealt today too? I think there was
Paul Blackburn,
where it was that was a nice return. Trevor Rogers to the Orioles, even he got a nice return. So there's Flaherty's going to get some guys back. So if you want, that, if you think that's worth it, then you got to be willing to pay up.
Yeah, let's get to a couple super chats here. Jonathan says, would it be bad to sell starting pitchers? He's looking at the market and saying, maybe put a couple of these guys on the market and see what happens. Come on, Jonathan. We need the confidence that this is our year, not that we're going to become sellers here.
Well, I just want to say that I put a similar message in the Dodger Blue group text today, and it's not necessarily about selling because you don't believe in the team today. It's kind of similar to what they've done in the past with Ross Stripling, Mitch White. You could buy and sell at the same time, just because the price tag on starting pitching right now is insane. So I mentioned the name Landon Knack, partly joking, but if someone values, Landon Knack is better than Trevor Rogers, in my opinion, and look what he just got back. So there's a team out there that looks at Landon Knack as a guy who they could plug in their rotation right away, and that could kind of help you get back prospects to maybe go get a Crochet or Flaherty or whatever. Then that's something I think they should consider, even though like it's tough. It's definitely tough trading away starting pitching right now. And I wouldn't do it obviously with some of the top end guys like the River Ryan to me is not going anywhere, but it's definitely something to consider.
Yeah. A couple more here. Larry with the super chat. We appreciate these. He says, should we cut ties with Dustin May? He's only pitched 20 games since 2021. We can talk potential all we want, but he's simply unreliable. I think the issue, Larry, is they don't have to do anything because he's under team control for a while. And the question with Dustin May is simply, would any team place value on him? I think if the Dodgers feel like they could get value for a guy like Dustin May, given the guys that they have upcoming through the system, I'm sure they would be open to moving him or Tony Gonsolin or guys like that. I just think that the bottom line is there's just not going to be value. They're not going to trade Dustin May for 20 cents on the dollar as if he's the equivalent of like the 20th ranked prospect in the system, because worst case scenario, you wait this out and see what happens. And he's back next year. Obviously the esophagus surgery he had was a weird one, but I can't imagine Dustin May will be moved just because I can't imagine there's a team out there that would value him enough. He would move the needle enough for the Dodgers to be interested. Another super chat here from Peyton Brown. Is Scooble completely off the table? How steep of an asking price would he go for? If they're going to overpay for Flaherty, why not just overpay for Scooble? Look, my take all along has been, if you're going to pay and it's going to be an overpay, then it better be for somebody who's really freaking good, which is why I narrowed my list down to Scooble, Crochet, and Flaherty. Now, Scooble, by all accounts, in every report, is not available. So could that change? Have the Dodgers pulled something out of their hat at the last minute? Absolutely. But it sure seems like he's off the table. There is some team control with him, which is the issue. But when he asked the question, Scotty, of how steep the asking price is for a guy like Scooble, I mean, it's starting with Dalton Rushing, River Ryan, and Justin Robleski, and kind of going from there would be my sense. I don't even think those three names by themselves is enough to get that deal done, given the price. Do you agree with that, Scott?
Without a doubt, it would be a price that you would look at the cost and then say, man, this is something. I haven't seen this, in quite some time, and under Andrew Friedman. And then you would just say, we got Scooble, and you try to forget about it. That's what you would do as fast as that's what you would do as fast as you can. And that's for the people that don't care for prospects until proven otherwise. Like if you're going full on, players that haven't seen the big leagues, that's what you do. And until they're prospects, until they're big leaguers, until proven otherwise. So that's for a deal you like that. It's an all-in type of move. For what the Dodgers need. If you ask the chat, if you ask yourselves, if the Dodgers just get a bat or they just go get the back end reliever, if Andrew Friedman makes the Tanner Scott deal, do you feel comfortable with where the starting pitching's at? That's kind of what we have to ask ourselves here. And I'm just terrified of another situation, another scenario where they go into the postseason with a rotation that they're not sure of. You've got to have your front end guys. If Yamamoto's not there, you still have to wonder about it. If Kershaw's not there, you still have to wonder about it. You need to go into October with 3 that you're confident in, and then you have the rest of the depth to really figure it out. If River Ryan steps up, Robleski steps up, and go from there. So, Gavin Stone, you just cannot afford to go into another scenario like last year. That's why I'm just starting pitchers got to be it. If they get into a bat, cool. If not, it's a starting pitcher. But Peyton, it's a good question. I just don't know how available he ever was for a reasonable cost right now.
Let me ask you both this question, because I think if we're talking Scooble, Crochet, and Flaherty, we're obviously talking 3 separate tiers of cost. I think you've got Flaherty as the baseline, a guy who's really good, but is going to be a free agent at the end of the year. Then you've got Crochet, who is incredible and yet doesn't have the track record, has injury concerns. And then you've got Scooble, who basically has no concerns whatsoever. We've seen him do it before. He's been durable. He's got a little bit of team control. So let's say the price for Flaherty is something like $1. And if Crochet is 2x that and Scooble is 3x that, which of those deals would you be most interested? If you could triple up the cost of Flaherty and get yourself Scooble, would you do it? Or would you rather double the cost and get Crochet? Or would you rather pay $1 and just get Flaherty? I know those numbers are rough and vague, but I think you get the sense of my question. So Daniel, I'll come to you first. If those are the costs, which of the 3 guys would you want?
I would want Scooble. I think he's the best out of them. He's the least risk involved. Like, and like I was kind of talking about, like the Dodgers window is now, and you would basically have this guy for the next 3 postseason runs before you even even need to talk about an extension or a new contract or whatever. So it's like, if you're going to pay 70 cents on the dollar for Flaherty, like might as well pay 130 cents on the dollar for Scooble, like in theory, like you said, and just give up those couple extra prospects. And now you have, a starter locked into your rotation for the next 3 years. So, yeah, I mean, considering the like we talk about how we don't want the Dodgers to trade some of these, pitching prospects just because we're so high on all of them. But if you're getting back a guy like Scooble, I think you feel a little more comfortable, trading some of those guys.
Yeah, he's basically the 100th percentile outcome for a guy like River Ryan. So that's what makes you comfortable moving on from a piece like that. Scott, do you agree? Would you just go put all the chips in the middle for Scooble, or would you settle for Crochet or Flaherty?
I wouldn't settle until like you're forced to settle.
Yeah.
So like until I think I see people in chat saying same stuff, and I forgot who put this up here. Hep, I feel you. Like I don't know if we can put that up there, but like the prospects aren't trash. It's just the fact of, if the opportunity to get a player like Scooble is there, you have him for 2.5 years, arbitration contract still. That is just, you have to do that. That's a situation where it's not just giving up pieces for a rental, because if that rental goes south, you're talking about Scooble, who, you have him cost controlled essentially for 2.5 seasons. And that's something where that gives you the number one arm right now. Like he is the American League Cy Young number one right now. If you have the opportunity to get that, you do it, and you worry about it later, because then you have 2 years to replenish those prospects. Yeah. And I don't like looking around the roster, how many spots on the major league roster are those prospects going to be cracking on there? So you have time to do that. So if it's there, I think you've just, until all options say that you have to pivot, you stay on the number one option until you just have to. But the Crochet stuff's interesting. We could dive into a lot of that with the contract thing and everything, because then it gets dicey. But Scooble, that's just, I'm with Daniel there.
Yeah. I would go Flaherty would be my answer. I just think the prospect capital matched up with a guy, in part because I think I think the Dodgers have some guys at the top of the system that are really, really nice and that have the potential to be answers to questions future down the road. And I would not be mad about Scooble. I think Crochet would be the one that terrifies me the most of these three, if I'm being honest. But with Flaherty, get him in the building this year. And also part of that is me banking on and taking the risk of, hey, he's a local guy. If he performs well, like how complicated would it really be to get him back in the offseason? And then maybe you're getting 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years of control of Flaherty, but only having to pay the prospect cost for a few months. That's obviously not guaranteed. So it's all factored in, but that's kind of how I would land on that one.
Yeah, we'd probably see a deal, maybe like a, oh my gosh, Sonny Gray. It would probably be like a Sonny Gray type of contract for Jack Flaherty for those next couple of years. Yeah, that's what we'd probably see.
Another super chat here from Laura, and I know she's feeling this one. I can feel the emotion in this question. Do any of you believe right now there is a move coming? If you had to make a prediction, Scott, I'll come to you first. Do the Dodgers move the needle in the next 36 minutes, yes or no?
Yes.
Daniel?
I think they make a move. I don't know if it'll be the move everyone's hoping for, but I think they'll do something. They'll add a pitcher. Like I think
Flaherty is the line. Do you think? And you had to say, do you think they make a move Flaherty or above?
No.
Okay, I'm with Scott. I think they do. I think there's just been so much smoke on Crochet and on Flaherty that I think as teams start to filter out, and Andrew Friedman gets the urgency, I think he's just waiting for the moment. So
look at look at what the other teams have done. Look at what the other teams that were possibly in there. Like the Phillies could do it if they wanted to. I think that they were probably looking more towards back end help. They addressed that with the Estevez. The Orioles, same thing. They went and got 2 arms instead of getting 1 because their rotation depth is way down. I think a lot like the Astros are in a spot where I don't think they were looking for a number one. It just points to a lot of the Dodgers. I'm not saying the only team left, but for a team like the Dodgers who have a need like that, just saying a lot lines there. Yeah. Mike, same thing. Yankees have a lot of motivation. So it still leaves you 2. If the Yankees go and pony up and get both, then Godspeed. I respect that too, but it leaves one or the other. And the Dodgers have to pivot one way. They have to go.
Yeah. And again, it sounds like they're in on both. And so if the Yankees were to make the first move and go get Crochet or go get Flaherty, then the Dodgers are looking at the other one and saying, all right, there's one dance partner left at the table. Like, what do you want to do? The leverage might shift, and that's possible that what we're waiting for, but it's all speculation at this point. Let me give a quick shout out to our sponsor, So Rare MLB. You guys have heard us talking about it if you've been here before, but So Rare is a good sponsor of our show, and we appreciate them. It is a free fantasy baseball-esque digital player card collectible game. Check it out, So Rare MLB. There's a link in our description. Again, totally free. You draft a team, you set a lineup Monday through Thursday every week, and then Friday through Sunday, opportunities to win collectible cards, to win cash. We had a giveaway last month in which 3 people won 2 tickets to a Major League Baseball game of their choice, people across the country. So we've got Diamondbacks tickets, Dodgers in town. We got Mariners tickets. We got Dodgers tickets going out to those people. They were giving away all-star game packages, all sorts of stuff. So if you've not checked it out, So Rare MLB, check the link in the description. We appreciate them again for being a sponsor of our show. All right, Scott, you mentioned Garrett Crochet. He's one of the names that's long been connected here. Talk me through where you're at on Crochet, because there's mixed stuff. This is a guy who's thrown way more innings this year than he has in his entire career combined. He's already making contract demands. He's already making demands about what usage he's going to have. He's on an innings limit, and yet he's elite. He's elite. This season, you can't argue with the performance, with the exception of this last start that he just had. So walk me through kind of where you're at on Crochet and how interested you would be if you were the Dodgers.
So big time arm. I think aside, like, before, he looked like the clear cut, that's your guy. Like, aside from Scooble, like, Garrett Crochet was your guy. If you were a Dodgers fan, any smoke around possibly having a trade, yes, he's thrown 114 in the third innings this year. We're over, double his career high, which came in 2021. This is this big transition to being a starting pitcher, but the ask for an extension, it's an understandable thing. It's totally frustrating to hear from Crochet's perspective. He's on an arbitration contract. If something happens and blows his arm out, then he's got zero leverage going forward. Yep. But if they project him like what he is, he's a live arm, big time stuff there. He's elite. Like, he is what he is, Root Street. Agree with you. Like, he is an elite arm. And what better organization to have someone like that than the Dodgers? But the risk of injury, it's possible. He's right now, you're at a workload where I think the Dodgers could manage it. It's just, are the Dodgers at a spot where they can have their number one guy they brought in be on a managed load going down the stretch? I think is the question they have to ask themselves. Do they have enough? And possibly the rookies that the Dodgers have had right now, Landon Knack, River Ryan, Robleski, and Clayton Kershaw for what he's giving, possibly they can find a way to manage it to a spot. But we're already in 2 times territory with Garrett Crochet, and they have to ask themselves, what's up, BC? You have to ask yourselves, is that a move you're willing to make? He's under contract. There's nothing forcing the Dodgers to do it. But if it gets hairy down the stretch with him, his agent, usage, is that a territory the Dodgers want to get to? Do they want to extend him right now, working out numbers before a trade deadline? If they have a tentative agreement, it's possible. Then all things are possible, and you have to go, like I said, start at the top and then work your way down. It's just you run the risk of possibly losing out on Jack Flaherty, who's been a little bit he's been just right there, usage or production wise. So it's just a matter of, do you want someone who has more control, or do you want someone who is on an expiring deal that you won't have to really worry about those contract extensions?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because we're talking about, hey, the window is now, Daniel. You said that. Like, this is, obviously the window is extended, but it's also right now. You've got a lead in the division. You've got a team that's really good. And yet, in many ways, Crochet isn't the big, like, if we're Flaherty I don't even know if it's debatable, but Flaherty would be more help in 2024 than Crochet would. And yet Crochet is going to cost you more because of the future value. And so that's the balance that I think the Dodgers have to make here is, do we pay up for a guy who's actually less helpful in 2024 than he might be in 25 and 26?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I'm going to be honest, like, I am a little sketched out with Crochet just because, kind of like you just broke down, like, I feel like that's kind of more of a move that would be for the next couple of years. Like, I don't know what you're going to get out of Garrett Crochet in October this year, let alone September. Like, Scotty break it down pretty perfectly about how he's pretty much he's way past his career high in innings, and that's not even factoring in the contract situation as well. Like, I know you could always just kind of call his bluff there, but what if he does come over and say, hey, I'm not pitching without an extension? Then are you forced to pay him 120 cents on the dollar for an extension just because you want to make sure that he's on the mound for you this year. So yeah, I would be cautious with Crochet. I'd say, like, if a deal kind of falls into place and you could find a way to do it without a super overpay, like, I'm definitely interested. He's a really good pitcher, but if the White Sox are asking for the sun and the moon for a guy who you would either have to extend to pitch for you, or you have to take that risk, that he'll be willing to pitch, and also that's on top of the health risk of is he even going to be healthy and effective by the time October rolls around. He probably would not be my first choice, just for all those reasons.
Got another super chat here from Kirk Lewis. It doesn't feel like the front office is really in World Series or bust mode. What are your thoughts? It's a results business, right, Scott? And so the front office can say we tried. And yet, unless a deal gets across the finish line, I think there's going to be validated, justified frustration from fans and folks like us who really believe this team has a chance to win and that there were opportunities to get better. And so I think it's a tricky piece to navigate, because we can read, hey, they were in on Tanner Scott until the end, and also say that's a crazy price for Tanner Scott. I'm glad we didn't pay that. And yet, if they don't do anything, they're going to get crushed for not doing anything. So it's the impossible life of a GM, and in the Dodgers case, team president Andrew Friedman.
No, that's a great question. Kirk, thank you for that one. I mean, it's something that could carry us for much longer time than we have to the trade deadline, for how the production went for the first half, up until now. I would say for their, the pieces that you really have to dig into for the big league regulars, the guys who are going to be penciled in there every day, you do not have to worry about them. It's where you get down to the nitty gritty of the roster is where you win championships. That's why a move like Tommy Edman, he makes his way back. He's a key piece because he comes in, plays a couple positions. You know what you're getting out of Tommy Edman. Those type of moves will win you a championship. Those guys who just can, set them, forget them. I'm not talking about your Teoscars, Shohei, Will Smith, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, but it's about the injuries. Nobody wants to hear that the injuries are something that can hinder a team greatly. And you look at a team like, Atlanta. Everybody, once Acuna went down, Ozzy Albies just got hurt again. You look around and you say injuries happen. How are you going to weather them? But it's that we've seen the offense fall off a cliff, at a certain thing. It's saying, how did the Dodgers front office that has been so good at avoiding these type of things and building out an entire roster where you can lose a player and slot somebody else in and there's like no drop off. So, I mean, it's a question that people probably fans ask every single year, probably after every game. Are they really, winning it? Are they going for it all with this type of stuff? But they've dealt with a ton of injuries, a lot of down performance across, their entire bench who had a slip. And now we're praying that, Gavin Lux is proving us all wrong. And he is. James Outman didn't happen. He could have slotted in as an everyday guy. It's just for, unforeseen things. You can't forecast all these injuries. So sure, that you can question the training staff. However, the philosophy, great. But they are, I think they're in World Series mode because the front office keeps handing out cash. But it's now that they addressing a problem and addressing a troubling area is where you go ahead and then you see, okay, are you really willing to give up? Are you going to go AJ Preller? Are you going to go out and fix these needs? Because this is a good moment to continue with this current roster. You have to ask yourself, is this roster good enough to do it? If they keep making a little bit of moves, if they go out and trade for a starting pitcher, damn right. This is a World Series or bust roster.
Yeah, we got another super chat here from Saki Bomb that I think sets it up. Saki Bomb, thanks for the huge super chat. Do you think the Dodgers' mindset of win now but compete for the future hinders them in trades? I feel like when other teams are in win now, they sell out and don't mind losing years to win out now. Daniel, this is, I think, a fair question, and this is the Dodgers. This is, many would argue, the greatest strength of the Dodgers, that they've been World Series favorites basically every single year for the last 7 or 8 years, and there's no end in sight because of the developmental side of the organization, because they have these top prospects and they're willing to spend and they draft and develop all of that kind of a thing. And yet it also is the exact same thing that prevents them from going out maybe and pulling an AJ Preller. So how do you navigate those two things? Is this a problem or something else?
Well, to answer Saki Bomb's question, I do think they're in the mindset of win now, first of all, obviously. I do think that they have been hindered in trades because they haven't been willing to push them all in. And at the same time, I don't think that's a bad thing. Like you said, I think that's one of their biggest strengths. Like sometimes the best trade is the one you don't make. Like you you don't want to trade. Like, I remember back in the day, I think it was like Corey Seager and Julio Urias, like for Cole Hamels was the deal that they talked about, and the Dodgers kind of pulled out. And I think that was a good idea.
Dozier?
Like,
you remember the Dozier one with Belly?
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's so many examples of trades like that. Who was the Pirates closer that they wanted, like Dustin May and Gavin Lux and all these guys for, and that guy ended up being a pedophile or whatever. Like
Felipe Vasquez, yeah.
Sometimes the best trades are the ones that you don't make. But yeah, I mean, look, if the Dodgers really wanted to, they could go out and get Jack Flaherty, Garrett Crochet, and Luis Robert right now. They could go get all those guys if they wanted to right now. And who, there's still no guarantee that's going to win you a World Series. Like, part of it is most of it, I'd say, is who gets hot at the end. You obviously want to put together the most talented team possible, but there is luck involved. So there's been a ton of teams that have pushed all their chips in, and they have no World Series rings to show for it. So I think, the goal of Andrew Friedman in that front office every time is, how could we improve the club and try to win now, while at the same time looking at the future and keeping this run sustainable? Because we want to be in the playoffs every year, because if you're in the playoffs every year, that gives you a chance to win the World Series. Like, you could debate, some years you might have a better chance than others, and you should push your chips all in on those years. But at the end of the day, you just want as many lottery tickets as possible, and you hope you could cash one or multiple, of those in during this run.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that, because the number of people that when I interact with, it's almost like they wish AJ Preller was their GM. And yet, what has AJ Preller won? Like, he hasn't sniffed winning anything. And so the idea that, like, pushing all your chips in and just building now, I mean, AJ Preller, like, we're literally watching it happen. We don't have to imagine what would it be like if a team just traded all of their best prospects every single year for guys in quote unquote win now. Like, we're watching it in the Padres. And it has resulted in absolutely nothing. And so it's not to say that you should never do that, but I think it just goes to show that sometimes people imagine this world where, well, if they had gone all in, then they would have won the World Series. And we have proof that that's not the case. And so obviously there are times when, the best trades are the ones you don't make. You said there are lots of times now you look back and say, man, could they have sold higher on some guys like Gavin Lux, who haven't panned out in the same way that maybe we hoped? Of course. And that's the give and take of all of this. I think, and I've said this before, my view on trades, my view on all of this relates to my view on winning the World Series, which is 100,000%. It's the goal every single year, but the best team doesn't always win the World Series. Like, can anybody tell me what the Diamondbacks did at the deadline last year? That was like a huge needle mover that everybody wanted them to do. They added a couple guys around the fringes, but if you would have asked like Dodger fans if they would have been content with those moves, they wouldn't have been. I think baseball is a lottery winning sport. You have to get into the dance, and then it's basically minimal difference between the teams with the lowest odds and the team with the highest odds. And I know people don't like to hear this, and I see people in the chat that don't like this, but I'm just telling, like, this is the reality. You can put the best team together in baseball, and it guarantees you nothing. It guarantees you a chance to make the playoffs and then decent odds to win the World Series, but not guarantees. And so I appreciate what the Dodgers have done. That's not to say there are times I wish they wouldn't have been more aggressive or less aggressive, but I think ultimately the Dodgers plan, we could point to like what could they have done that would have guaranteed them a World Series, I guess is my point. Scott, I see you smiling. So give me what your thoughts are.
I'm just looking at their, I agree with you to what you're saying. Absolutely. The randomness of baseball, it cannot be ignored. But I really keep drawing back in my mind to the expectation from the front office, the hype surrounding the season and looking at the window that they're currently in. It's something, Jeff, you and I, we've talked about on a number of occasions.
Yeah.
That the window that we believe that the Dodgers are in at the moment, this year, next year, the following, Blake and I have kind of landed on the next 3 years that you're getting, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, Ohtani, all in this spot here. And it's just, it's beyond me to look at, the rotation that they currently have, the questions marks that they currently have, and to maintain that, there's too many injuries, just get them next year.
But nobody's saying that. That's like, I don't think anybody's saying that.
Yeah, no, I get you. And to having glaring needs, and the cost might be too much, but do the Dodgers believe so strongly in their, in their front or in their player development that, getting rid of some of these guys that they could trade, is it going to hurt them that much to maybe, overpay a little bit for one of these moves, make a deal that's not so get killed on a trade one time, please. That's all I'm asking. Like, if
but I
it's
mean,
there,
but you said earlier you wouldn't have done the Tanner Scott deal.
Not for that. No, I'm really never in favor of trading for a reliever on expiring contract. It's got to be the last move that you need to make to put you there and to feel comfortable. It wouldn't be that for the Dodgers right now. If it's for a starting pitcher, absolutely. If that's it, to what Daniel said, you guys agree that it's you're pitching, 6-7 innings a game, possibly. You can impact a game and shut out an offense all on your own. I just think it's prime for what the Dodgers need. This is it. They have Glass now. You've got some question marks about Yamamoto. And then past that, what do you have a bunch of guys who, have injury concerns. They haven't done it in the postseason before. We saw how Bobby Miller went, on fumes. It cannot happen like that again. I just see a clear need. I see a farm system that there has to be some, not stuff stripped from it, but you have to at some point understand that a lot of these guys will not have, spots to play. And it's a moment where I think you just have to attack a need that you have to address before the postseason.
Yeah. And I don't disagree. I think we're on the same page. It's maybe splitting hairs here, while also acknowledging that it takes two. like the Dodgers can't just decide, okay, these 3 guys for Jack Flaherty, send it in. Like, the Tigers have to be willing to match it. And if the price goes crazy, again, I use Tanner Scott as an example because he's a guy that a number of people have asked the Dodgers to go get. And yet all 3 of us are saying, man, like, we want the Dodgers to go all in. We want them to be aggressive, but not at that price. We don't want them to be that aggressive, which I think is reasonable. And I think that's how you get to a place, Daniel, where there's a little bit of this back and forth. We want them to be aggressive. We want them to push the chips in. They did spend $1.3 billion this offseason, by the way. So they tried to push their chips in at the beginning of the year, which I think is the smarter time to push your chips in. But this is the balance of the trade deadline every year. And with, 18 minutes left to go, and Crochet and Flaherty still currently sitting at home by all accounts, I'll be fascinated to see. I have no clue what the next 18 minutes are going to hold, Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think when it comes to the trade deadline, you have to take it on a year-by-year basis. Like, there were times in the past where I was glad the Dodgers didn't trade their top prospect for whoever was available at the time. And there's times like right now where I think, hey, this club really needs a needle mover, and they have a farm system that has a lot of depth, and they have the farm's in a really good spot right now, and they have the ability to trade from that. And so I think this is one of the years where, like Scotty was saying, you don't mind a little overpay to make a move coming off the offseason. They just had, like you said, we kill them for the deadline last year, but if we're really being honest with ourselves, like, that kind of was the year to sit out the trade deadline. Like, there wasn't. We
gotta pass. We know Dodgers news here, so I don't want people to get hopes up. But Eloy Jimenez headed to the Orioles from Chicago.
I got excited for a little bit. Look, there's the Orioles getting another guy too, and that's probably going to be relatively cheap. He's pretty much a DH, and he's on an expiring contract, but that's a solid bat to add to your lineup. So I think this is a year where the Dodgers are in a similar spot where they still need to make another move or two, and the clock's ticking. We're up to 15-16 minutes here.
Yeah. And again, to be clear and put this, all 3 of us right now would like to overpay for a starting pitcher. All 3 of us, Flaherty, Crochet, Scooble, whatever it is, name the player, pretty much name the price. We're interested. So we'll see if that plays out. We got another super chat here from 300 GJW. Did Blake Snell get moved? He has not been moved. He is still a member of the San Francisco Giants. Scott, any chance the Giants would ever trade with the Dodgers? Any chance?
They take all the money, but I don't think the Giants are concerned with that. I don't think they're worried about the price. They just offloaded Jorge Soler's deal, and Atlanta did them a big favor there for doing that. That type of trade was a move for the Giants to say, hey, that was Farhan saying, if we perform, we perform. If not, they just got lucky again. And Atlanta's done this a few times. They took on, I forgot his name. My goodness. It's now their closer. Raisel Iglesias. They took on that entire contract from the Angels. They've done this multiple times. So unless something like that happens again, I don't see them, trading with the Dodgers. So no.
Daniel, you at over under a 0.5% chance the Giants would trade with the Dodgers.
I mean, I'd go over. Like, I think they would trade with the Dodgers if the Dodgers offered them some crazy deal, but I don't think the Dodgers would ever offer that. So I'm not expecting it to happen.
Would that be
like, I think Farhan, in theory, like, if the Dodgers came with some crazy deal, like, they wouldn't just say no just because it's the Dodgers. Like, I think they would do it, but I don't think the Dodgers would ever offer that.
Yeah.
Is he a need to mover, Daniel? Blake Snell?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I mean, he's
So
been looking good lately, and he's a notorious second half type pitcher. Obviously, he signed like way late into spring training, so that kind of led to his struggles and then the injury and whatnot. But he's looked like himself lately, and I definitely think if you put Blake Snell in the Dodgers rotation, that's a huge upgrade.
I also can, like, Jeff and Daniel, like the hype from Dodger fans and people who cover the team, they've said we're looking for impact pieces.
Yep.
So what else should we be looking for? And if they don't do it, then what happened? What happened? If that was your target all along and you saw a bunch of these guys who could be, productive players with the team miss out because you're going for the big fish. If it doesn't happen, what's the point? Why couldn't it's not at that point, it's not settling.
And let me ask you guys a question that I've kind of been thinking about, like considering the market for pitchers is insane right now. Like if you're the Dodgers, do you kind of shift your focus and go get another bat? Like maybe go get Cody Bellinger now and try to put together the best lineup possible and just kind of roll with the young starters you have? Or do you feel like they have to add a starter?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question. And that's kind of what I said on our show last night with Matt and with Greg is, as they were sort of worrying, rightfully so, about the state of starting pitching. My thing was like, look, if this team wins a World Series, it's going to be because their offense is untouchable. And so maybe it is, the market of just lean into the strengths. Now, I'm not the biggest Bellinger guy in the world, so I don't think Bellinger's the guy I would go, but I do think there's something to, that. Now, the Dodgers do have a pretty full roster. Not to say that the Kevin Biggios, Kike Hernandez's of the world couldn't be sent packing, and nobody would nobody would miss these guys. But I do think there is some element of like, I think they've got a group of like 11 or 12 guys that they feel decent about. So I don't think they've got infinite room there, obviously, if it's a needle mover. But I think it's a great question, Daniel. Scott, what do you think? Like should the Dodgers just lean into going and getting more bats?
They've really got to weigh all options. I banking on
Rooker,
offense,
baby.
because we thought they had enough offense last year, but the offense didn't have a chance before they could even take the field. Weren't they losing? I think they were already down by 5 runs each game before they even had a shot. Just off starting pitching. Do we believe it's the same type or as bad as it was then? No, I don't. I think they have enough options right now. I'm going to knock on wood again because anything can happen, but options that you could put in the postseason where you won't get in a 5-run deficit each time out. I think they're okay for the moment. I wouldn't bank on that. But if there's a bat, like which bat's out there that you could do it, you can go get Brent Rooker. You could go get some guys that move the needle for you on that sense. I just think the focus has to be starting pitching. The cost is just so high. So is there a moment? Is this the time when you just have to get a little stupid for Dodgers perspective and go do that? Probably. Yeah. You probably do. If you feel the offense is going to be enough coming back and they're going to give us the guys coming back from the injured list, they're going to be the ones that'll get us there. Maybe. And that's probably why they went and got a few role players who, and Tommy Edman, who they know a baseline of. Ahmed Rosario's been solid. They know a baseline of what he's been, plays multiple positions. And their drop-off has been in the bottom half of the lineup. So if that's where the approach they're taking, I think they also know that the Dodgers are going to, need to go get a starter. But I don't think I'll be okay. I don't think I'll be okay if they don't get a starter.
Let me ask this, because, to your question earlier, Scott, which I think is a fair one. And as always, we appreciate the people joining us live on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. Huge crowd here, as expected, on deadline day. They said, hey, we're going to go after stars. We're going to go after impact guys. Has there been a single guy traded that you wish the Dodgers would have been the team on the other end of it?
I would have liked to have gotten Eric Fetty. I thought that would have been a name. That's somebody that I would have enjoyed. It's not a star, but he's definitely a productive arm. I just want some, for whatever James Paxton didn't give you in terms of high-end production, he was out there every single time he took the mound. He took, that's what you need. You need someone who's going to give you some length. You're going to give you sustainability. The top arm hasn't been moved yet. Yeah, Rosarena, that's someone I loved. Yeah, absolutely. But by all accounts, like they're solving their center field spot with a guy in Tommy Edman who hasn't played. So
gritty though, Scott. Let me tell you, we've got an interview coming tomorrow from a Cardinals beat reporter. He's gritty. Plays the full 90.
We spoke yesterday, Jeff. You asked me where do I think Edman's going to play? I said center field, and if that's where it is, then that's where they're solving their center field slot. They feel strongly that they need a pitcher. So I'm stuck on that. Has there been a clear number one moved?
Yeah.
Not really. Yes,
I mean, and I'm
teams.
Fetty's the guy that Daniel mentioned to me a couple days ago, and I agree with you on that. I don't think our tone would be different if Fetty was involved in a trade. I don't, that's my point is like, if it somehow ends up that none of these guys get moved, then I think it at least is helpful to Andrew Friedman's cause to be able to say, like, I don't know what none of these guys, there was not a single impact starter moved. Like, I don't think if they got Kikuchi, we'd all be saying, all right, fine. If that's it, we're good. Like, I just think it's been a lot of talk and a lot of smoke and pretty underwhelming so far, Daniel.
No, yeah, I think all the impact starting pitchers haven't been moved yet, and that's pretty crazy to think about. The deadline's 10 minutes away. Like maybe these teams are just holding out for the best offer possible. Like I'm sure the White Sox and the Tigers are talking to the same teams like about their starting pitchers, so they're trying to see who's going to up their offer last minute or whatever the case may be. But looking at the starting pitching market, like you said, like I wasn't head over heels for Kikuchi. I would have liked Fetty but I didn't view him as a needle mover necessarily. So all the big name starters are still out there for the Dodgers as we sit here 8 minutes to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Real quick, I mean, we've got a couple minutes here as we wait on the Edman Kopech trade yesterday. Ahmed Rosario. I did see a couple people saying, you know what, I feel better about getting Kopech in the door for what it cost, given the cost of some of these crazy relievers are going for today. Again, nobody's saying that Tommy Edman is a massive needle mover or that he's dramatically changed their World Series odds. But Scott, given the prices that you've seen today, the names that you've seen today, has anything changed as far as your thoughts on the two minor moves that the Dodgers made yesterday?
If that's all they do, this will be,
I'm just those moves in isolation.
Yeah. It's been, for what they need. I mean, it kind of lessens it. Like if you're asking me just if those two moves, since we talked yesterday, they are fine for what they are, but they have to be in lockstep with something else. Those moves right there aren't going to bring up that level enough to a point where I feel like it's going to put them over the thing. Kopech's a great get. I like him a lot for that. I think getting him into the Dodgers organization and their pitching philosophy, working with Pryor is an awesome pickup with another year of control after this year. Edman, I feel if they get him back to that 5-win player that he was, I believe last year or in 22, 2 years ago. So he's at a good point. He's versatile. This is exactly a move the Dodgers would make. It's not a big time needle mover. But it's a necessary move for where the floor is on that bench. I think it just has to be in lockstep with getting something else on a depleted area of the roster, which is the starting pitching. The bullpen, I think they have enough now. It's just, it's got to be with those two, Jeff. We talked about tier 1, tier 2. It's got to be, if they're going to go tier 1 offense, then they go tier 1 offense, tier 2 pitcher. But you've got to fall in line somewhere.
Garrett Crochet not going to be traded this deadline. Ken Rosenthal just reported that. So he's a guy with team control. So that's huge news with 6 minutes to go. We talked about maybe one of the two teams that needed a starting pitcher backing off. Well, it went the other direction. Now, reportedly, the Yankees and Dodgers, maybe the Phillies, are competing for presumably one starting pitcher, which is Jack Flaherty, who is very likely to be dealt, we would imagine, at this point. So 5 minutes to go. All eyes on Jack Flaherty and the Detroit Tigers. So it's the tension is building here, Scott. The tension is building.
We just got Kiermaier from the Jays.
Really?
Did we really?
They just got Kevin Kiermaier from the Jays.
It feels like that's been in years in the making.
There you go. There's your center fielder.
Jeez Louise. Daniel said he wanted more bats.
Apologies to Matt, who may or may not be in the chat. He might have rushed to write this, but he's the Bellinger guy out of all of us. So guess they'll have to settle for Kiermaier.
Okay, so I mean that tells you, is that a reflection on Max Muncy's health? That they need Tommy Edman at third base or shortstop or somewhere else?
Got to get Flaherty. Man,
I mean, we traded Yarborough for Kiermaier, so that's this year's version. Fine. That's this year's version of Syndergaard for Ahmed Rosario. There, look, I think considering that's what the trade is. Jeff Pass and Flaherty to Dodgers.
Seriously, let's freaking go, boys! Let's go.
We got him.
Freaking go!
We got him.
There we go.
Okay.
All it took was the Ken Rosenthal Crochet's not being traded notification for Friedman to make the call to the Tigers.
Let's go, baby.
Freaking go, boys.
No,
he said it.
Hold on a second, because we've seen the Dodgers and Tigers make a trade for a starting pitcher right before the deadline before, only for it to be pulled back last year with Eduardo Rodriguez. But
we've got better
I'll be curious.
geographic.
Maybe it might be a similar passage, a similar package.
We've got better.
It had not worked out last year.
Chat, we're here.
Geographic family locations. He's happy in Southern California. We do have that confirmed ahead of time. So that's good news. Let's see. Breaking. Woo! Yeah, I love. Oh my gosh, Jeff Passan. And we were joking on our group chat that Passan was kind of getting slapped around this deadline. Rosenthal was kind of working him. And here's Passan dropping the biggest bomb on everybody, right? 3 minutes before the deadline. Where was the patience, people?
Decision.
Where was the optimism? Where was the optimism?
Don't look at Rosenthal, what he said. He said, decision apparently rests with Detroit. We don't need this.
Come on, we're doing this. I told you.
Doing this now.
Dodgers in serious discussions was
don't
Rosenthal's
do this, Ken.
Come on, Passan wouldn't do us dirty.
No, there's no way. Like, especially like Flaherty's got to be thrilled right now, coming home, obviously going to a team where he could compete. So I don't see there being any way that this, doesn't happen. So yeah, I mean, now let's talk, because this is a really good deadline for the Dodgers. We'll see what the package is, but you're talking, they got 3 bats who improves, their floor and their bench, I'd say, with Kiermaier, Ahmed Rosario, and Tommy Edman. They get a bullpen piece in Kopech, who has really nasty stuff, and knowing the Dodgers, he'll end up probably being one of their high leverage guys down the stretch. And now they get the rotation piece in Flaherty to cap it all off. So
Heyman just confirmed it, by the way. Jack Flaherty to the Dodgers. So Rosenthal's been taking dubs all day, and he takes a big fat L right at the end. So
let's go, baby.
Yeah, and then somebody tweeted, "Never doubt Bob Nightingale," who reported Jack Flaherty of the Los Angeles Dodgers.
That's right.
What a king, man.
So
where's Bob in the chat?
Nightingale deserves all the credit. So huge news for the Dodgers. We will see. We'll see about the cost as it comes. Real quick,
should we try to make predictions on who's going back?
It's got to be Dalton Rushing, right?
I mean,
Dalton Rushing.
If not, I'd say one of the 2 catchers for sure.
Or 3. Yeah, Lorenzo's higher rated than Cartaya in many people's eyes. So it's got to be a catcher, and I'm hopeful that it's like and I know Jackson Ferris is good. I would love if they could keep Ryan and Robleski. I mean, I don't know if they'd be interested in a guy like Emmett Sheehan, but that would be an interesting name. Frasso, another guy with arm injuries, but highly rated prospect. Kyle Hurt, another guy who's had arm issues, but highly rated prospect. So
May Gonsolin, should we keep going on the injured?
Let's look later. Oh man, how we feeling? Yeah. How we love it. Okay, so we revisit the question that you just asked me right before all that went down. How do I love the moves from yesterday?
Yeah,
great, love it.
I mean, without seeing cost, is this an A+ deadline for Friedman?
Yes. A+, I'll say A. It's an A. It's an A.
Skubal would have been A+.
Yeah.
You say what? Skubal and A+? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's like looking at where the team those deals right there. It's raising the floor. The offense fell off once the depth started to get pushed into starting roles. So as long as you remedy that, you get Kiermaier, you get a plus glove, you can move pieces around. Chat, this is it. This is what we've been talking about. Poor Dodger
beat reporters who are still trying to get the details of the Ryan Yarbrough for Kevin Kiermaier trade on the timeline as all this is happening. What's that?
They only gave up Lorenzo and Trey Sweeney.
No way.
Phenomenal. Phenomenal.
If that's seriously all the trade is.
That is full deal. Robert Murray.
Guys, that is not even overpay. That's an underpay.
Yeah.
They gave up
especially compared to compared to Kikuchi, compared to Tanner Scott, compared to Trevor Rogers. Like this feels like a great deal here. I mean, I'm guessing the Tigers must really like one of these 2 prospects, I would guess.
Lorenzo is a guy that a lot of people really like, and he's probably getting overshadowed because he's a catcher in the Dodgers system, and he's but I mean, I think there are people that have Lorenzo on par with Dalton Rushing, or at least in the conversation. So look, if this is the trade, and by all counts it's the trade, the Andrew Friedman slander. We need a 24-month ban on Andrew Friedman slander. Man, I mean, we're talking about the Padres just gave up 3 of their top 5 prospects for a reliever rental, and the Dodgers gave up a guy like nobody in their top 7 probably. on most lists to go get a starting pitcher.
Which deal did we get Trey Sweeney? Was it for Ferguson or was it for Victor Gonzalez?
Yeah, regardless.
It was one of the two, though. It was one of the two. So
those guys were together, I think, weren't they? I think it was a 2-for-1.
Well, I think Yorbit Vivas was with Gonzalez, and I think that might have been for Trey Sweeney. And then because Caleb Ferguson was like later in the offseason.
That's right. It was Vivas was the guy going the other way. And then look, Trey Sweeney, massive, like I got to see him. It's he was not going to be the shortstop of the Dodgers future. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
Holy crap, boys. That's an insane. The names we just talked about. Well, it's got to be Dalton Rushing and then it goes, well, actually it's not even the top catching prospect. And then it's a shortstop that the Dodgers have had such bad shortstop issues all season. They still refuse to call him up all season.
Cooked.
Andrew
Friedman cooked.
I mean, what do we get? 12-month ban on any Andrew Friedman slander, Scott? 24 months?
We've got people in DB mentions under every single tweet cooking. And I don't have to name any names, but I know some people watching that know me that I talk to on a daily basis watching can go flame them out. Never doubt Friedman, man. This was the move. What a deal. He goes out, addresses the needs. This is it, guys. Awesome stuff.
And Ken Rosenthal just tweeted that Flaherty was informed that the deal's done. So we could end all that speculation. It's a done deal here. And now look, the Dodgers have the chance to trot out a rotation that starts with Tyler Glasnow and Jack Flaherty. Who knows if Yamamoto's healthy, he might be your number 3 or 4 starter realistically. And that's not even getting to Clayton Kershaw, River Ryan. Gavin Stone is now like their 5th starter probably. So yeah, I feel a lot more, comfortable about where the rotation is at now, finishing out the season and into the playoffs. And of course, in the offseason now, maybe they talk with Flaherty about a long-term deal, depending on how some other things work out.
Yeah. I'm honestly speechless. The fact that we started out with that Tanner Scott package as the leading segment. And I mean, I think there's different conversations that happen when AJ Preller's on the other end of the line and Andrew Friedman's on the other end of the line. Let's just put it that way. And look, people were mad. Why not? Why hasn't anything happened? Why hasn't anything happened? Andrew Friedman read the desperation on the face of the Tigers. I said it on Twitter. Deep breath. Be mad in an hour, people. Don't be mad now. And look, now there's nothing to be mad at. Laura, massive super chat, walking out of work, loving life. Laura, you should be skipping out of work. You should be dancing out of work. We can't be walking on a day like today. So unbelievable stuff
Jack Flaherty, man.
From the Dodgers. Cool. Laker Toby, Jack Flaherty with Mark Pryor. Now I feel okay. Now we just have to hope somebody teaches Roberts how to manage in the playoffs. Well, his job's getting easier in some ways because he has better players, and better players are always the key to making a manager's life easier. So, yeah, I mean, look, Mark Pryor doesn't need to touch much with Jack Flaherty. I pulled up his numbers. You look at Jack Flaherty, the Savant page, it's a lot of red. This is a guy who's 94th percentile in whiff rate, strikeout rate, and walk rate. I mean, again, if you just want to draw up in a lab the type of pitcher you want, how about get a lot of swing and miss, strike a lot of guys out, and don't walk anybody? He does all those things. Exit velocity, all that is above average, 70th percentile and higher, 90th percentile expected ERA. So it's great stuff from Jack Flaherty. Again, this is an outlier season compared to his recent ones, but the sample size is building. This is a former top prospect. We've seen him do it at the major league level before, albeit a few years ago. So good stuff there. Kind of some of the more traditional metrics, if you want those. 2.95 ERA on the season. Ironically, the exact same as his expected ERA. 11.2 strikeouts per 9, 1.6 walks per 9. Again, Scotty, that's how you would draw up a starting pitcher in the lab if you were going to draw one up.
Yeah, absolutely. He's turned himself into just, an arm. Like he's turned him into a force. Same reason why we brought him up over a month ago talking about him. I said that Crochet deal wasn't going to be the one. If they couldn't figure that out, then Jack Flaherty was going to be the guy. He's had sustained production throughout this year. I love what he's brought. Just someone that I'm very intrigued by. I'm ecstatic about it. Get him in the organization, someone that's made the starts. He's had some questions. So, if stuff pops up about his back, I believe that, those things are behind him. If teams felt strongly enough, the Dodgers are at a thing that perhaps that was the cost. And maybe that was some of the things, but love what he brings. Peripheral numbers are fantastic. I love his arsenal. He's a strike thrower. Just a terrific arm all around.
Yeah. And again, to put it in the context Daniel put it into, the Dodgers traded basically Yorbit Vivas, Victor Gonzalez, and Theron Lorenzo was the cost to get Jack Flaherty, because again, this is the multi-level genius of Andrew Friedman. It's not just that he got him for these two guys, it's that one of these guys came over in a trade for spare parts 6 months ago. So the fact that he's able to do those little moves around the edges, it's the Michael Busch trade, where here we are talking, and both the guys they got in the Michael Busch trade are like top 10 organizational prospects. It's always 3 steps ahead, of what everybody else is doing.
You know, what's funny also is that when Mike brought it up, he goes, do you think this is first, kind of a get back for what happened at the last deadline with Eduardo Rodriguez? And I'm like, I mean, it's pretty funny that, the number one arm essentially that is available to the Dodgers right now without having to do too much. Jack Flaherty, Detroit Tigers.
Yeah.
It's good to have him.
Of all the Dodgers made the biggest move of anybody at the deadline. Period. End of sentence. They got the best player of anybody. So the talk of investment from the Dodgers, I think we can put that one to bed for now. A couple more super chats here. 300. That was a huge get. A+. I wish they would have added Paredes, because I don't think Max is playing again this year. And again, Paredes upgrade. It's possible the Kiermaier deal is related to some Max Muncy insurance. Kiermaier can play center field. Edman can play third base. And then when Muncy comes back, obviously they just DFA'd Yarbrough. So if they need to DFA Kevin Kiermaier in a month and a half, it's not going to be any skin off their backs. Daniel, this one's for you. MHB Manny. Rob Pelinka, take notes. Can you pass that along to the Lakers GM over there, Daniel?
I think he's been hibernating for the past month or so. So I haven't been able to get a hold of him really.
Yeah. Hawaiian
one thing I did want to say before we start answering some of these other questions, just because I know I was watching the show last night with Matt and Greg, and they were kind of a little sketched out on Flaherty just because his last few seasons weren't that great. But I think a lot of people know this, but I just want to emphasize the point that this is Jack Flaherty's a guy who was growing up was always the best player on any team he's ever been on, pretty much. He was a first round pick out of high school. Top prospect all the way coming up, had immediate success when he came up with the Cardinals. It was kind of him and Walker Buehler were kind of neck and neck as the best young pitchers in the game for a couple years there. And then obviously he had some injury issues, he had, some arm issues, some back issues. So, it took a few years for him to regain this form again. They say when you're coming off a serious injury, it usually takes 2 years to get back to your previous self. So last year he was healthy the whole year and just didn't pitch that well. And this year, in that second year, he's really gotten back to the pitcher he has been and the pitcher he can be. I think he's still 27 or 28 years old. This is a guy who's in the prime of his career. So he's having a great year. I wouldn't be worried about him necessarily, regressing to end the year. I think what he's put on tape this year is legit. I think he's going to be a really good number 2 starter for this team.
Yeah, it was back in 2018. He was a top 40 prospect in Major League Baseball. Of course, he comes right up, has success in those first few seasons. 2018, 3.3 ERA in 150 innings, 2.75 ERA in 196 innings. And then basically you're dealing with a guy who was battling through injuries. 2020 shortened year, but then only 78 innings in 21, 36 innings in 22. Last year, kind of his first full season back, 144 innings. And now you kind of see that, the year after, if you will, which you see in a lot of pitchers, which is strikeout rate goes up, walk rate goes down. And again, the key to me, and I know I said this on last night's show, and I think it's important to say again, sometimes we can poke fun at the Baseball Savant page and the percentiles and the nerd stats and that kind of a thing. My point with a guy like Flaherty is you are right to look at Flaherty's numbers and say 4.99 ERA last year, 2.95 ERA this year. It's a fluke. It's a flash in the pan. He hasn't had, he was bad in 2022. He was bad in 2023. How can we believe this? This is where Savant and some of the underlying metrics, in my opinion, are super helpful. Because if you were to look underneath the hood and see, man, he's not really missing any bats. He's not really striking anybody out. He's not limiting hard contact. And yet the ERA is good. That would be the reason for concern. I.e., I used this example last night, James Paxton. James Paxton had a great start to the season. He had a lot of wins. He had a low ERA, but you looked under the hood and said, man, he's not missing any bats. He's not limiting hard contact. And what do you know? Everything ends up evening itself out and he gets shelved. Jack Flaherty has all the underlying metrics that tell you the breakout we're looking at a 28-year-old guy who used to be a former top prospect who has done it at the major league level before is legit. And so, look, it's only a 3-month deal. I think the Dodgers are going to be very interested in bringing him back next year, especially as a local kid. like Glasnow, he might be interested in signing that extension at some point, but for today, unbelievable get for the Dodgers in the form of Jack Flaherty. Let's do a couple more super chats here. Hawaiian Kira wants to know, when do you start popping champagne? Of course, Andrew Friedman had to do it. He has to get championships from Ohtani. Look, if you saw our reaction, Scott, that it wasn't quite champagne popping, but it's close.
A lot of fist pumping, and that's what we'll get with Kira. Thanks for the super chat. It's good to see you in here. It's definitely a good, this is a positive trade deadline. This is something that, Dodger fans have been kind of going for and complaining about Andrew Friedman and, banging on the door. I'm about complaining is the right word, but it's, hoping that he does understand that there's a need that you have to attack and not just be opportunistic. And if the deal is there and if they don't get the top deal or they're set on one thing, and if you don't, then they just, that's it. We'll just go with what we've got. I'm glad that they didn't just settle for that. Crochet deal wasn't there, didn't happen. You look at the next best option there. And by all accounts, the prospect cost wasn't too high. And it just so happens you're getting a guy in Jack Flaherty with peripheral numbers that I love. He's striking guys out. He is not walking people. He's got an expected FIP of 275. So he's doing things himself.
Yeah.
So
Sorry, I just want to say it just trickled in that the Giants traded for Mark Canha, and that just feels like the most Giants player of all time. That's
yes, it does.
A funny move for them. But yeah, just to kind of address this, it's a great deadline for the Dodgers. They addressed a lot of needs. They got the high-end starting pitcher that we're all looking for. So kudos to them. They've put themselves in the best possible spot to win it all, but we're not popping champagne yet because we know how random the postseason is. And obviously, this guarantees nothing, to be quite frank. There's nothing is guaranteed, but we are all very happy. We've been talking about this for weeks on weeks and weeks, and for them to actually get the guys that we said they should go out and get, and the fact that they did it in this market at a relatively low price, considering the guy they got, I think we're all, ecstatic right now.
I like this note from Josh Thomas. He was talking about Albertus and Perez, who were part of the first trade, and now Lorenzo. Basically, these three guys were all signed 2.5 years ago for a combined $500,000 in the international free agency. So you want to talk about scouting, going and identifying these three guys and then developing them to the point where you could then swap a guy that Lorenzo signed for $30,000 in 2021. Okay, so 2.5 years ago, he signed for $30,000 and then was the centerpiece in a trade for the best guy moved at a deadline. That's identification, that's development from the Dodgers. So kudos to them as well. And again, another person pointed out, the Dodgers acquired all of these players and moved exactly one of their top 15 prospects in the farm system. So if you want to talk about balancing the win now versus the future, somehow they managed to do that yet again. They moved one of their top 15. And again, it's probably not one of their top 7 or 8 on most lists. Definitely not a top 5 guy.
And to add on to that, they didn't deal any of their pitching prospects. It was pretty much all, I'm pretty sure it's all position players, and that includes Miguel Vargas as well. So all their young pitching prospects that they're also high on, that we're also high on, they're all still here.
Yeah.
At least they understand too. Get position players in the Dodgers farm system. Get them out. You're not just kind of it goes along with the meme that we've kind of been going with. But Toribio said that no other moves are coming from the Dodgers per his sources. So last 2 days they've got Tommy Edman, Michael Kopech, Ahmed Rosario, Kevin Kiermaier, Jack Flaherty. Call it a deadline.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Braden with the super chat. If all are healthy, which is the biggest if in the history of the world. But give us the starting rotation, top 5 or 6. So obviously he's saying if all are healthy. So Yamamoto is the if here. So you've got Glasnow, Yamamoto, Flaherty, clearly 1, 2, and 3. Yeah. I guess you could mix and match Flaherty, maybe 2, Yamamoto 3. After that, you've got a mix of Stone, Bobby Miller, Clayton Kershaw, River Ryan, Justin Robleski, Daniel. Which of those names do you think maybe slot into 4 and 5 in a best case scenario?
Well, look, if the big lefty number 22 is healthy, he's number 4 for me. We've only seen him for one start, but if he could kind of build off that and stay healthy, he's in that mix. And then I think right after him, it's River Ryan. I mean, that stuff is nasty, and I like the makeup with him as well. We haven't mentioned the name Gavin Stone seemingly at all. And look, he has struggled a little in his last few starts, but if you're going into a postseason series with Gavin Stone as your number 5 starter, I'm also feeling pretty good there as well.
Yeah, Scott, for you, Kershaw, Stone, River Ryan feels like kind of the 3 guys at the back end of that 4, 5, and 6. How do you see those 3 shaking out?
I'm kind of in lockstep with Daniel right there. I mean, Gavin Stone's had a tough time lately. He's not striking out as many. He's kind of showing, maybe some fatigue. Maybe the league is getting to him a little bit. Maybe he needs a little, like Dave says, a little blow. He needs to take some time. But I love what, it's a big workload for him right now. He's pitched a lot of high leverage innings. I've seen enough from Gavin Stone where I'm confident in him and what he can bring when things are clicking right. But from Clayton Kershaw, he went out and gave you 4, allowed 2 earned, had 6 punch. I love that from him. So keep progressing there. It'll shake out, but we haven't mentioned Robleski because I think he's going to be a terrific piece for the bullpen if that's how things can shake out. I think we all like that. He fills up the strike zone. That's an arm from the left-hand side. We could see him in some multi-inning performances, but I'm kind of in alignment with Daniel here. A lot is going to hinge, though, everybody, on the health of Yamamoto, because then we could see everything get shifted up. So we'll keep a very close eye on the progressions from Yoshinobu going forward.
Yeah. Brandon asks, if all are healthy, will Bobby be back this season? I think that, Bobby Miller and Walker Buehler are looking at all the names ahead of them, and they're finding themselves, Stone is probably 6th. Then you've got Robleski, Landon Knack somewhere in that mix. I mean, if I'm Bobby Miller and Walker Buehler, I'm working on my relief pitcher routine if I want to be contributing in 2024. And I don't mean that as a knock. I'm just saying those guys haven't found the success. We're running out of time in the season. And if we're looking at likely spots for those guys to make a contribution, I feel like, Daniel, that might be where it comes.
Yeah, look, those guys need to show progress that they could even be successful at the minor league level right now. Like, if we're being honest, like they both just got roughed up this week in AAA. So until they show that progress, they're not really names that are in the mix. And look, I'm still really high on Bobby long term. Like, the stuff is still great. I think he kind of lost some of his confidence, and he also dealt with an injury for a while. And sometimes the mechanics get out of sync, and similar to like a Flaherty last season, like sometimes you just got to get synced back up, and the talent level is still there. So until those guys show that they could get outs, I don't think they're really in the mix right now, especially when we just went through 6 or 7 guys before even getting to them. So, and that's not even accounting for Landon Knack, who probably isn't going to be anywhere near a postseason rotation. But like, if you need innings to finish out the season, Landon Knack is a great candidate for that.
Very quality arm in Landon Knack. Not a lot of credit, not enough credit has been given to him for what he's done. We had a conversation with all you guys, about how I felt that this is one of the best years. I think, Daniel, I've asked like that exact question. Is this one of the best years in recent memory where the amount of rookie and young arms have come up and contributed? And since then, 2 more have debuted, River Ryan, Robleski. So I think they just keep building on that. It's going to give them innings. And if they find a role and carve a rollout for them and down in the postseason, you just have to avoid a situation where your offense is down before your bats can even have a chance to step in the box. And I think with this Flaherty move, you're giving yourself that best chance.
Yeah. Ivan wants to know, rapid fire here, Scott, better chance to start a postseason game, Yoshinobu Yamamoto or River Ryan?
Asking me with all those health questions and things, we'll just guess and say that we'll guess and say that he's healthy. It's going to be Yoshinobu. I'll just stay there because everything hinges on health. That's hard.
Yeah, it's tough because if Yamamoto's healthy, he's definitely starting a postseason game. But if he's healthy, is a massive if. I'm going River Ryan. Daniel, what about you?
I'll go River Ryan as well, just for that reason. Like, I'll take the guy that's healthy. But I agree with you guys. Like, if Yamamoto's healthy, he's absolutely like one of the guys there. So
yeah. Peyton with another super chat. Who do you think Kiermaier and Flaherty replace on the roster, plus the other acquisitions? I believe all 3 guys acquired yesterday already have been accounted for on the 40-man roster. Scott, do you know if that's true?
I'd have to check into it. Give me 1 sec.
Okay. I do know they designated Yarborough for one of those guys. So like, it's not like Kiermaier just takes his spot. So they will need 2 moves for these guys. But I think other than that, they're set.
Yeah, I'm looking like, I wonder if, Mookie was placed on the 10-day IL on June 17th. If you did the math, it sounds like he's going to be right on the cusp of if he can come back before that's a 60-day IL trip. But I wonder if that's maybe a short-term move, is just put Mookie on the 60-day IL. He would be out until like August 16th or something like that. And then he would be eligible to come back. That would open up a 40-man roster spot that's kicking the can down the road a little bit. Nick Ahmed seems like a very obvious candidate, although they kind of need him to play shortstop now.
You could throw Ahmed there if you want. Also, Kevin Biggio. is a candidate as well, I would say.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I mean, hopefully not Fiducia, but I suppose Fiducia could get DFA'd as a guy that if they don't need him. I mean, that's the part.
Yeah.
And then they've got guys like Gus Varland, Nick Ramirez. I think both of those are guys that if they were DFA'd tomorrow, but those are 40-man issues. Then you've got 26-man roster issues that are bigger beyond that. So it's a fair question, Peyton. So all right, guys, let's wrap this up. A couple more minutes. Let's just get some final thoughts. Again, big picture. Obviously, the headline today, Jack Flaherty is a Los Angeles Dodger. Theron Lorenzo and Trey Sweeney, two of the guys that were sent out in exchange for him back to Detroit. And Ahmed Rosario came in yesterday. He's kind of a utility guy who I was talking about last night, probably a platoon at second base with Gavin Lux and a platoon in right field with Andy Pages. Kind of feels like where he would be able to help the Dodgers. He's got positive weighted runs created plus against both lefties and righties. So kind of let Lux hit only against righties and Pages only against lefties. You kind of solve a lot of problems there. And then you've got a guy in Tommy Edman who probably, when he's back, we have an interview, by the way, tomorrow with Katie Wu of The Athletic, who covers the Cardinals, talking about Tommy Edman, talking about his health. But he was expected to start playing defense in his minor league rehab assignment today, had he not been traded. So presumably he's got a week or so more in a minor league rehab assignment at least, and then would be back with the Dodgers. But Kiermaier center field somewhere, and then Edman eventually center field, but in the short term, maybe shortstop, maybe third base until Mookie and Muncy get back. So Scott, big picture, we talked about this. You're giving it an A grade for the Dodgers, big picture in the with the trade deadline.
Yep, they addressed the needs at exactly what it was. If it wasn't players who are going to be controllable long term in terms of like their tier one guys, I feel like they did a terrific job in terms of addressing the floor of the bench. It's exactly what has hindered them for most of the year. It's been like I've mentioned it a couple times. People in the chat will hear me say it. It was an uncomfortable place to be from a Dodgers fan perspective. Someone who watched this team absolutely put a dynamo of platoon options out there. Guys who just can slot in there every day, play multiple positions, and not be terrible. They've just been plagued this year of guys who've been in the 60 WRC plus range to about 70. It's not a good place to be because you're going to fail more times than not. Now they're getting guys in there who are going to succeed more times than not while keeping versatility. You go attack starting rotation, Jack Flaherty, slots right into the front end. I think you can live with run prevention going that way in terms of going to get, possibly a Luis Robert, who is just, a center fielder, big time guy, but he's not the superstar bat that you would have had to do to offset the pitching that you could get in house. So for me, that's where it lies. They address the needs, and I think Daniel will co-sign all of it.
Yeah. Kyle Glazer, by the way, formerly of Baseball America, just tweeted, the Dodgers got the best starting pitcher moved at the deadline for significantly less than what was paid for worse starters and non-closer relievers.
Crazy
deal for the Dodgers was his assessment of this deal. Daniel, give me your final thoughts.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna give him an A as well for pretty much all the reasons that Scott laid out, and part of it as well is like Kyle Glazer just said, the Dodgers got the best starting pitcher at the deadline. Yep. And that also means that none of their opponents got the best starting pitcher at the deadline as well. So that's part of this as well. Like no one, you could say no club improved as much as the Dodgers did this deadline. Like not only did they get the top starting pitcher, but that they got him at a good price, like you guys were saying, and they also raised the floor of their offense, like from the bottom of the order and their bench. Like they brought in three guys who are capable of filling roles that they needed. Like, no, they didn't get the middle of the order bat, but let's be real. Like the Dodgers didn't need a middle of the order bat. We've been talking about the bottom of the lineup all season. Like the top 4, 5, 6 in the Dodgers lineup has been awesome. Like, when the guys have been healthy, it's the bottom of the order guys that have struggled, and they brought in guys who could fill roles. Like you got Ahmed Rosario, who is having a really good year. He's batting over 300. We know Matt loves that. And he could play multiple positions, and he could be in there against lefties every day and also play against righties some. Yeah. Kiermaier is a great glove in center field, which anyone who's watched the Dodgers this season knows the defense in center field has often left much to be desired. So he could fill that need there. And then Tommy Edman is kind of the do everything guy who could fill whatever hole you need. So as long as he gets healthy, that's a guy I love in the 8 or 9 spot every day in that lineup, moving around wherever they need. So
yeah.
And then also Kopech, like I
Yeah.
almost forgot about him, but he's a guy who you could tell why the Dodgers are interested in him. Like the stuff is upper 90s. He just needs to work on the control and such. But that's the kind of deal where you look back a month from now and you're like, wow, I can't believe the Dodgers also got Michael Kopech in addition to all the other guys they got.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm happy with how the deadline went. It guarantees nothing, but I think all of us are feeling a lot more confident about this team now than we did, 3 days ago.
Yeah, and I think Rosario, like, he's the perfect example of, you look at Rosario on paper and say, who cares? But if you take out Gavin Lux's 30 weighted runs created plus against lefties and Andy Pages's, 79 weighted runs created plus against righties, and replace both of those with just even a league average 100 weighted runs created plus production, that's a massive upgrade in both of those places. If in center field, you're getting a guy who plays defense like James Outman, but hits a lot closer to what they've gotten out of Andy Pages, that's a huge deal. We've been begging for that guy, and Tommy Edman might be that guy, while also being somebody who's going to give you competent defense at shortstop, competent defense at third base or second base as needed. And so I think that's where, like, those individual names, if you just look at like these guys as everyday players penciled into one spot, you may not see the value, but it's allowing all of the other guys on the Dodgers to play in their most comfortable spots while plugging these guys into the holes and upgrading. Literally, if you would have said, what are the biggest weaknesses in the minutia? It would have been a second baseman who can hit against lefties. It would have been a right fielder who can hit against righties. And the Dodgers went out and addressed those kinds of needs. Of course, with Jack Flaherty being the cherry on top as the guy who's kind of got the, the biggest prize in all of this. So I'm with you, Scott. I think this is an A trade deadline. You could argue that because they waited until the last 2 minutes, maybe it gets an A+ from me just for the suspense factor. And because some of us had already started accepting the fact that nothing was going to happen, but just incredible job by Andrew Friedman in tandem with the offseason they had to address a lot of needs in the offseason. And despite all the injuries, despite all the bad luck, Daniel, they once again went out and got all the guys they needed.
Yeah, and one thing I just wanted to add, a couple minutes ago when we were talking about like who's going to take what roster spot, like I think in the immediate like 26-man roster, like Kiermaier, it feels like he just took James Outman's spot. If we're being honest, like when Edman gets back, then we could maybe think about getting rid of Biggio or Ahmed or whoever. But I think as far as roles go, it feels like Kiermaier is going to take James Outman's spot, and James will go back down to AAA and hopefully finish the year strong, and he's an option if they need him due to injury or whatever. But it definitely feels like as far as immediate spot and playing time, that's kind of where it's going to go.
Yeah,
Yes.
It's a great. I know. As we were talking through the Kiermaier, I was like, he's basically just James Outman.
Yeah,
like really good defensively, terrible, but maybe Outman goes down to AAA, has a little bit more success, gets to play every single day, and again, Kiermaier is just literally. This guy might not be on the roster in 3 weeks. They traded literally DFA'd a guy and then traded that DFA'd guy for him. So who knows? Scott, last thoughts here, and then we'll go.
Super excited, man. Those last few months, we've just been chatting about it, what they've needed to do, what Andrew Friedman's needed to do. Floor, bench, bring it up. And just, I love that. It's going to be for what Kiermaier, I think Kiermaier has a spot. I think Kiermaier, I don't think he'll be a DFA candidate here. I think back of the baseball card, what he's done consistently from the last few years, aside from this year, who knows what goes on in Toronto. But this is a year that, he's at a 53 WRC plus. Last year, he was just a little bit above league average. So we're talking about a guy who has the possibility to be, a decent contributor there. So maybe they just want to get something a little more surefire, bank on a rebound there. Someone who, has done it. He's been there, done that, and what type of glove you're getting. So I like that they attacked it you can look at it in a little bit of a bulk way. They didn't just get like a number one utility man. They got a couple guys who could be productive pieces. So last thoughts, chat. Thanks for everybody being here, man. Like this is the trade deadline, rumor mill and the build up here is exactly how it was. And that was drama for us. That was drama the last, 10, 15 minutes there.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. That's Scott Geirman, Daniel Starkand. I'm Jeff Spiegel. As always, check out DodgerBlue.com. Full write-up on all of this. As I said, if you're not already subscribed here, ring the notification bell. We've got an interview with Katie Wu of The Athletic that we'll be posting tomorrow. That is kind of a breakdown of who Tommy Edman is, who the Dodgers are getting. Why do Cardinals fans love a guy so much who's not really a superstar? Some really good insight from her as to just what type of person the Dodgers are getting as well as what kind of bets are reasonable to make on his health, on his offensive production bouncing back. So that's really good stuff. And then, look, if you're not sick of me already, I'll be back tonight for a live post-game show with Anthony Witrato. So you're getting about 4 hours of Jeff today. So apologies to anybody that's above the limit. But Anthony and I will be here live after the game tonight doing some post-game stuff. So that should be a fun one as well. But tons of content coming in the days to come. So if you're not already, 6 nights a week, live post-game shows here on Dodger Blue 1958's YouTube page. Scott's hosting a couple of those. I'm hosting a few of those. And it's good stuff all around. So we appreciate you all. 3,000 people in here live over Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We appreciate you all. Couldn't do this without you. A lot of fun. Hour and a half mark and good times all around. Jack Flaherty, baby. Jack Flaherty is a Dodger. He's coming home. And no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The Dodgers stole this one from the Tigers. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. As always, go Dodgers.